Storytale Podcast, how stories shape and change our lives.
Thank you so much for joining me for an exciting episode that I have very much been looking forward to. Today I'm going to be in conversation with a very good friend and mentor of mine about the wisdom of stories from a Native American perspective. My friend Bear, who comes to us from the Mescalero Apache community, is here to share with us some of his own wisdom and experience with storytelling. Bear is a healer and a teacher. He has traveled all around the world, learning the wisdom of storytelling from many different communities and many different traditions. He has run numerous sweat lodges as a form of communal healing ritual and works with people one-on-one who want to continue working their way through their own stories and finding more of their own healing and growth. In this episode, we will be talking about the role and the importance of the storyteller in the Native community. We'll be talking about how stories arrive to us through the balancing of the tensions between the light and the dark. We will explore the wisdom of the medicine wheel and how each direction provides us with different tasks as well as lessons to be learning in life. We'll talk about the importance of curiosity and how the stories we tell are designed to awaken that curiosity within us. Bear will share with us the story of a warrior, which is a story of love, commitment, and persistence. He will share with us the wisdom of revering our earth as our first mother, which teaches us about the importance of how to care for her properly. And we'll be talking all throughout the episode about the wisdom of animals, ending our time with a story about Coyote as a trickster and the lessons that we can learn from immersing ourselves in this and other similar stories. So it is with great excitement that I now introduce to you Bear and our conversation. Please enjoy.
Good to see you, my friend. I just kind of wanted to talk back through the stories that we were talking through last week and kind of where stories come from. And two big themes that I was hoping that we could cover and start with was the balance between light and dark, like we talked about last week. And then maybe kind of moving into how you describe the different directions in the medicine wheel and kind of what each one is pointing us towards in terms of where our work is, where our stories go next.
So this is about storytelling, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what is a story? A story is a way of communicating thoughts.
Yeah.
About creating curiosity.
Yes.
About passing on experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So where do I go from there? Okay. So the elders always say that when you have an experience in a dream or vision,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost impossible to verbalize what that feeling was.
Right.
You know, it's you can relay all the details of it, but there will always be something missing because it's that part of us that
Right.
experiences that moment.
Like
So-
direct experience beyond what we can put language around.
Exactly. So a lot of what I grew up with is well, the time I spent in Hawaii, they talk about talking story.
Mm-hmm.
That's about talking about the experiences they have around how they teach their young.
Right.
In the Indian community, they have what's called a winter count. And what that is that someone in the family will get maybe a buffalo skin or some type of skin or paper. And what they'll do is the important things that have happened to that family during the year are recorded. And one person in the family will be the storyteller.
Okay.
So in the community, in the tribes, some people call it tribe, but I call it community. There is a winner count. What that is there's one person who is chosen to document all the important parts and pieces of happening for that community.
Okay. Kind of like a scribe or something like
Kind
that.
of like a scribe, yeah. And what goes along with that is that person who has chosen to be the storyteller is gifted all the stories that were given to him. In other words, there will always be a storyteller, and the person that's learning to be a storyteller is gifted with all the stories that have been passed down.
Is there some sort of sense of who gets to be the storyteller, or who is showing some, I guess, talent, for lack of a better word? How does that person get chosen?
They choose themselves. It's not something that's chosen by the client.
Okay, I see.
Okay, it's like a medicine person. A medicine person has to go through a lot of different types of training and stuff.
Right.
They're just a medicine person, or they're just a storyteller.
Got it.
So they're gifted with all the memories, if you will, of the clan. And so when they're learning to be in that gifting mode of teaching, the old storyteller will be there with them to correct them if they tell the story wrong.
I see. Okay.
Okay. So we talked last week. One of the stories that I remember is an elderly man and his nephew. The elderly man, the grandfather, if you will, was recognizing in his nephew that there was a lot of pain and sorrow in his heart because of his father's passing.
Yeah.
So, recognizing that, he said, "Grandson, come and sit with me by the tree." So he took them out to sit under the cottonwood tree. And the boy knew that when Grandpa sat down and smoked his tobacco, that he's getting in that place of understanding about life.
Right.
And one of the things he always said was, when you sit down and just be quiet, listen for what the Creator tells you through the wind.
Through the wood.
Through the wind.
Through the wind. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So they sat there for a while, and he rolled his cigarette and let it just sit there. And so he looked at the grandson. He said, "Grandson, it seems like there's something very heavy on your heart because of your father's passing." He said, "Yes." He said, "I don't know how to deal with it."
Yeah.
So the way Grandpa started, he says, on this planet, there has to be, as much light as there is in the day, there has to be an equal amount of darkness.
Okay.
And sometimes, because of the sadness that we carry, we get into the darkness and forget how to bring in the light.
Right.
And sometimes we call that grieving. So that brought up about my teachings of the medicine wheel. Medicine wheel is the 4 directions. Most people can understand that.
Right.
But for my teaching, it's when we go to the medicine wheel, I start in the west. In the west is where Bear goes to hibernate. That's where he goes to get that inner contemplation.
Okay. Yeah.
And so when we go to the west and get that inner contemplation, we get to look at what are my darknesses? What are the things that are keeping me from being at 100%?
So that's looking further into the darknesses.
Looking further into the darkness.
Yes.
So then we get to look at all the things that, have quote, have gone wrong in our life, or however you want to look
Right.
at that. But when we sit there long enough, we can come to that place of, okay, this is the darkness that's really affecting me today.
Okay.
Now, darkness could be stuff that happened when you were a baby, when you were growing up,
Right.
or the person that cut you off on the freeway 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And
Okay. But the darkness is, how do you react to these things? What's going on in you that's bringing that negative connotation?
yeah. Okay.
So once we gather up that understanding within ourselves of saying, this is my darkness for today,
Okay.
then we start moving to the north and understanding that, okay, when we're moving to the north, that's when we're starting to look at that. This is what I want to set down. This is what I want to work on. This is most important to me. So when we get to the north, then the teachings say that we can take that darkness and put it down in the cold, in the snow, and let the mother take it and reuse it.
You relayed a beautiful story last week of the buffalo and the
Yeah.
relationship to this direction.
And in that north, when we go, sometimes it's hard for us to face those things. But like the buffalo,
Yeah.
it's the only animal on this continent that will face into the snow
Right.
rather than run away from it.
That's what I thought, what I found so fascinating. Yeah.
So when we get that clarity of what we want to let go of or to work on to keep from continually doing it, then we start gradually, and we recognize exactly what it is, and we let it go.
Yeah.
And that transition from going from the north to the east, we stop midway, because that's where we understand that the creator is, we ask that creator for help. We ask, and we ask the mother for help, because that's most of those, this is where we live, and this is who we pray to.
Okay.
So that when we get to the east, we've got that support and knowing and understanding, okay, this is what I let go. What do I need to replace it with?
Okay.
If it's anger, what are things that are opposite of anger that I can replace it with?
Mm-hmm.
If it's sadness, how can I create the happiness in my life?
Right.
It's understanding that when you start replacing these things, you're in that place of for better lack of terms, putting prayer out in the universe, to the creator, and saying,
Yes.
this is what I need, this is what I want.
Right.
So once we get that clarity of what we're going to replace that darkness with,
Mm-hmm.
then we start gradually moving into the south.
Okay.
And the south is where our ancestors go to and where they come from.
Interesting.
We ask the ancestors to give us support, to help, to get us to
Yeah.
understand that it's okay for us to be letting go of those things and replacing those things with something good.
It's a lot of affirmation and validation for that we're on the right track, we're on the right path.
Exactly. But inevitably, as we go to the south and we start practicing those things that are replacing that darkness, we recognize that we may have another darkness, or there's something about the darkness that we didn't let go of.
Sure.
So that then, as we continue practicing what we let go of before, we go into the darkness again,
Right.
to kind of modify it, to understand, okay, well, this is something that I need to replace too.
Right. What strikes me about how you're describing the approach to all four directions is that you're not there to just go explore and investigate. You're there to show up and receive what you need to see right then and there.
You have to take responsibility for your actions.
Right. Right. There's also some element to the South, if I remember correctly, that kind of relates to, what am I here to do in terms of breaking old ancestral stories that need to be healed on some level, right?
Mm-hmm. And there's part of that is that when we take care of some of those darknesses that we've carried ancestrally, when we start taking care of those things for ourselves, we're healing our ancestors in the same time.
Right. That's right. Bringing healing to their wounds and
Yeah.
unresolved stories as well.
So as the grandfather was talking to his nephew, he said that in this world there has to be an equal amount of light for the amount of darkness that we share. He said when we walk through life, that we'll come across a lot of things and people who are out of balance.
Yeah.
You have too much darkness or too much light.
Yeah. Interesting.
So he said it's not that you recognize it in them, it's you recognize it in yourself.
Yeah. Right. Well, I can probably put together a little bit of what too much darkness looks like, but although I'd still love to hear more about that. But how would you describe what too much light might look like in a person?
When someone will continually let someone do something because they think they're a great person.
Oh, okay. So more of an ego kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In other words, they're just letting them go through, and trying to be nice about it. And the bottom line is that's the darkness that they're not facing.
Yeah. Okay. That makes total sense. Yeah.
So as the grandson was sitting there listening to his father, he said, the darkness that you're facing is the loss of someone in your life.
Right.
He said, that's normal. We all have that darkness that we carry.
Right.
But how do we deal with that darkness is the important part. No, he says, no one can tell you how to grieve or how long to grieve.
Yeah.
But just with the understanding that when that grieving is less, that provides more space inside of you to bring in the good memories of the person that's passed. He said it's the way that might work for this grandson. He said, when you think of your father, the greatest gift that he could have given you was bringing you into this world. He said he did everything that was in his power to teach you how to be in this world, to become a man, to raise your own children.
Yeah.
And that's when he came into the story of talking about how he met his grandmother.
Oh.
He said, going to one of the ceremonies, he met this beautiful woman, and he was just totally infatuated with her and wanted to really be with her, and so over a period of time, he decided that he wanted to marry this woman. But unbeknownst to him, there were two other suitors that wanted the same thing, wanted to marry this elder's daughter. So the chief and then the elder got together and said, okay, so how do I decide which person is going to be my best for my daughter?
Right.
And so they devised a plan, and at the bottom of the hill, this large hill, was very steep and very rugged to get up to the top. The chief went to the top, and the challenge for the three suitors is that go up to the hill, be the first up, and come back down.
Top of the mountain.
Top of the mountain. And so they, being tough warriors in the way they were, he said that they all scurried up the hill and made it up to the top the first time, pretty much together. And he said, as it went on, we made it back down the hill, and the father of the young lady said, go back up, go back to the top. So they did this about 2 or 3 times, and then by the time the third time they came down, it became a big pour, a lot of rain, and so going up the hill was quite difficult.
Yeah.
So you should go back to the top of the hill.
Mm-hmm.
So they went up and they all struggled and came back down. And so when they got back down to the hill, the young lady's father said, "Time to go back up." And they looked at him and said, "But it's been raining and it's terrible trying to get to the top, and it's miserable." He said, "Go to the top of the hill." So they all went up back to the top of the hill.
This would be like the third or fourth time we're
Third or fourth time, yeah. And so when they get back, they got it to the top, and the chief said, "Go back down." So when they finally got to the bottom of the hill for the fourth time, then the father looked at him and said, "Go back up the hill." And one of them looked and he said, I'm a brave warrior. I can hold my own in anything, but I'm not going back up the hill."
Right.
He said, "Well, you can go on your way."
Yeah.
So the second one said, okay. So the last two started back up the hill, and part of the way up the hill, the second suitor decided, "No, I'm not doing this," and went back down the hill and left. But Grandpa decided, he went all the way up to the hill and came back down. And Grandpa says, "Go back to the hill, go back up."
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at him and says, "But I'm the only suitor." He says, "Go back up." And yet he was so tired and he was so worn out. But he said, I want to make this commitment.
Mm.
So he started back up the hill, literally crawling on his hands and knees. The father said, "Wait, you can marry my daughter." And he said, why did you decide that you want to make me go back up the hill? And he looked at him, put a hand on his shoulder, and says, "You were the only one who chose to make the commitment, whatever it took." And that's the strength and understanding that my daughter needs.
Yeah.
So the lesson in that story for his nephew is that there are going to be times that are very hard. There are going to be times in your life that there's nothing, it seems like there's no answer.
Mm-hmm.
But you have that commitment and you do it anyway.
Yeah.
And that's what will get you through life. Losing your father is one of those times.
Right.
We said, you'll get through this and you'll remember your father in a good way.
The feeling that I get from that story through kind of running through my own matrix in my head is, look, I've got a choice to just stay here and stay stuck, or to get up and move any way I can, is what it comes down to sometimes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's that part that we make that commitment to ourselves and to the Creator.
Yeah.
Moving here from Iowa, here to Iowa, I made that commitment that I would come here and support Naomi's mom at 100%, whatever that took.
And you guys were moving from Southern California, where you had particularly lived for quite a long time.
Yeah, 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A big change.
But that was my commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't matter what happened or why.
Right.
That was my commitment.
Yeah.
To make sure that her mother has the best quality of life that I can support.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at stories, there's all different types of stories in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We watch a movie, that's a story. When someone tells you about their time at work, that's a story.
Yeah.
The essence of a story is, how can you create curiosity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How can you blend that curiosity into something that will stay with that person
Yeah.
as a learning?
Yeah.
How sometimes we need to have that joy in life. Sometimes we have to have that familiarity with everything around us.
Yeah.
Laughter is the greatest healing part of any story.
Laughter and play. Yeah,
Laughter and
I
play.
remember telling you last week how I just learned about that Navajo ceremony of the first
Mhm.
laughing day
Yeah.
uh, of a child who has already been born, and they laugh for the first time, and it's usually because somebody made them laugh, and that person who made them laugh then
Hmm.
holds a special place
Hmm.
in that ceremony. Just how beautiful I thought that story was.
You know, the Navajo have a beautiful saying, says, as I walk on this Lord, on the mother, I walk in beauty in front of me, I walk in beauty behind me. I
Mhm.
walk in beauty to the left, and I walk in beauty to the right. It's a reminder that they're always walking on the mother, and the mother always provides everything we need. It's how we tend to view it, how we tend to see
Right,
it, that
right.
creates that beauty or the sadness.
Yeah. What other function does curiosity play in our storytelling? What is it designed to do for us? You talk about cultivating more curiosity.
What does it do? It does everything.
It does everything.
Curiosity is a way of getting us to get emotionally and physically involved,
Hmm.
whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
Curiosity is a way of pushing away that the word we like to use, I can't.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes when one of the teachings is when we get into fear,
Yeah.
we create more fear than there really needs to be.
Right.
If
Yeah.
you can imagine sitting in your dining room table, and that whole table is the fear that you've created.
Hmm.
But you put a grain of sand in the middle of that table. That's what is really the fear is all about. Everything else is what we've added to it.
Right.
So the
And fear.
curiosity is, how do we remove those darkness pieces?
Yeah.
How do we look at what truth is rather than what the truth
Yeah.
we want it to be?
Almost like bringing a lantern, some source of light with us.
Exactly.
The dark.
Bring more light into it than the darkness.
Right. I'm with storytelling, I'm always fascinated with wisdom figures, symbols, characters. Numbers sometimes play a big role. I'm curious. I know in a lot of Native communities, animals are central, and
Mhm.
and I'd love to hear a little bit about. We kind of talked a little bit about that with the medicine wheel. Are animals, for instance, a very common thing, wisdom figure to show up in our journey of curiosity is something or someone that kind of points the way, shows us where we're supposed to go.
Okay. So another story that was gifted me a long time ago is about coyote.
Coyote, yes.
Okay. Coyote has been called the trickster. It's been called the
Trickster.
animal that you don't want to be around or have anything to do with.
Right.
And so before the two-leggeds
Hmm.
were upon this earth, the animals had reign.
Yeah.
And one bright sunny day afternoon, there was all the animals got together to have a council.
Hmm.
And as they were having their council, we had bear, possum, had all the different animals having a council about what to do about the two-leggeds.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, here comes Coyote walking down the path with his brother,
Yep.
and they're flaunting around, looking, like wanting everybody to notice that they were there, and they were yelping a little bit, and, prancing around like they had beautiful coats. And the truth was they never took care of their coats and they were kind of raggedy and dirty.
Mm-hmm.
But none of the other animals would say anything to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so Coyote started mocking some of these people about who they were and what they were doing and why they were there.
Yeah.
And so, but, the elders of the, community were just looking at them and just say, okay. Then all of a sudden, this pheasant took off running because it was afraid of Coyote. So both coyotes, the brothers, look at each other and say, that looks like a good meal.
Mm-hmm.
So they looked at each other and they took off running, stumbling and everything, and going after this pheasant.
Yeah.
So they kind of lost sight of the pheasant for a minute, and they come up upon this pond. And they're looking around, and one of the brothers looked in the pond and said, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's at the bottom of the pond.
Yeah.
And all the other animals are just looking at these two like, what in the world are they doing? So the two brothers, they kind of walked around the pond looking at it, how can we get in there and get that pheasant so we can have a good meal?
Yep.
So the older of the two decided, I've got an idea.
Mm-hmm.
He said, we'll come over here and get this big rock and I'll tie it to my back. And then you'll throw me in.
Mm-hmm.
I'll catch the pheasant, untie the rock, and come back and we'll have a meal. So they kind of figured out how to get this rock on his back and tied it up. Sure enough, his brother threw him in. And as he threw him in, what happened was that we know about gravity. The rock was heavier than the coyote, so he flipped him over on his back.
Yep.
And as he was floating down to the bottom of the pond, he looked up and there was a pheasant in the tree.
Uh-huh.
So what moral did you get out of that?
Don't believe everything you see.
Okay. What else?
He's looking at the reflection of the bird, thinking it's the bird itself, right? And for me, I can see where I get stories that I tell about myself confused with me, and that aren't necessarily me, and aren't necessarily true, but I can get really I can get really fascinated and sort of entranced by those things, which feels like trickster energy, right?
When you're seeing your own reflection in the pond, huh?
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what else did you get about that?
So many different things that can come to my mind. I talk, when I think about trickster and kind of my own relationship to trickster, it's kind of a love-hate relationship, because on the one hand, it's exactly what you described. It's the character that you don't want to be anywhere around, right? And you go to great lengths to avoid it if you can, or to outwit or out-trick the trickster.
Yeah.
Until you discover that maybe you're the trickster.
Mm-hmm.
And you needed to have an encounter with trickster to see it for what it is, to see yourself more accurately, more clearly. So it can be a bad guy, but it can also be like the part that sort of wakes you up to show you what you don't want to see, or what you can't see, or what you're not willing to see. Right? We can get really caught up in things that we think we want and we need so badly.
Okay.
We'll go to great lengths, get a rock, tie it up, hatch a scheme, a plan. All the while, the bird's just sitting right up there in that tree, and you never saw it. Right?
Always looking down.
Always looking down. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Hmm.
What did you get from the other animals?
I was and I remember when we talked about this last week, I was particularly fascinated with the story of the buffalo being the only mammal on the North American continent that points its way towards the snow, towards the winter, towards
Mm-hmm.
the storm.
Mm-hmm.
And well, we don't have enough time for this session for me to unpack everything that I could be thinking about there, but you know, that strikes me. I guess one of the things that comes up is just intention. You know, you've kind of received your you've received your wisdom from the West, or your task.
Mm-hmm.
And how easy it can be to just kind of fall back into going with the flow of life, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And but this requires intention. I'm directly pointing myself towards something that might very well slow me down, or
Mm-hmm.
keep me grounded for a bit. But if I don't take the time to see it for what it is, I'm going to keep carrying that thing with me all the way around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to learn how to maybe let something go, or, as you said, open up for something new that needs to come along, a better story
Mm-hmm.
that's hopefully more true.
So during when the elders would tell that story, they would not ask the questions I'm asking you. They would wait and said,
Mm-hmm.
"What did you learn?"
Right.
And they'll wait and watch them as they go through time and say, "Well, what do you remember? What the coyote? How are you being coyote right now?"
Uh-huh. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then they would ask, so the other animals, what were they not doing that they could have done to help the coyote?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are you being like them and not wanting to help? So there's so many parts and pieces to break down in that one
Yep.
story.
There are. And I wish we had like many more hours of time for this recording. Unfortunately, we've got about a minute and a half left. So I want to take that time real quick to thank you so much, my friend Bear.
So that's part one of what is going to be an ongoing conversation with Bear, and hopefully an episode or two here in the near future. So thank you, everyone, as always, for tuning in. And my great thanks once again to my friend Bear for sharing his stories and his wisdom with us. May all of you find the opportunities to stay curious about your own stories. And as always, please take good care of yourselves. I'll see you next time.